forward from Germany, number 41, Dirk Nowitzki.
Tim Duncan walks off the floor, perhaps for the final time of his illustrious career.
Not about the championships, but about the down years, because we didn't run. We didn't run. We played through all that stuff, and we got our championships, and we did it the right way.
In this fall, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
How are you viewing this move from Durant?
Well, I'm viewing it as the weakest move I've ever seen from a superstar. Plain and simple. That's just how I look at it.
Player loyalty. It seems like a foreign concept in today's NBA. It's served some players wonders and done damage to others. Most players nowadays can't commit to a team to save their lives. With that being said, it seems like more players are choosing to abandon ship and join the next best team in hopes of winning a championship easier. But why is this happening? Players used to stay committed to a team for long periods of time, but I guess not anymore. What happened to player loyalty on a team in the NBA now? Well, in this video, we're going to answer that exact question. Before the video starts, don't forget to like and subscribe for more great videos like these. Now, before we get too ahead of ourselves here, I think it's best if we go over the history of player free agency and trades. From 1946, when the NBA started, until 1975, it wasn't even a thing for players. Players were stuck with the team that drafted them until the owner felt like trading them. This means that superstars of the old days, like Bill Russell, Bob Cousy, George Mikan, and Wilt Chamberlain, had no say in what team they ended up on. Now, this isn't genuine player loyalty. This is just the rules forcing them to stay on one team. So this is why we saw Bill Russell as a Celtic for 13 years, or Bob Cousy also as a Celtic for 13 years. They had no other choice. Now, thanks to Oscar Robertson and company, in 1976, the NBA loosened its rules of trading. It introduced the first stage of NBA free agency, where the league allowed players to become free agents in exchange for their old team's quote-unquote right of first refusal to match any offer they might receive. It wasn't great compared to what players have today, but it was definitely steps in the right direction. Back in those days, contracts were a lot longer and paid a lot less than contracts today. Contracts over time have generally become shorter, but with a lot more money involved. To really show you guys visual proof of this, I'm going to show you guys a chart comparing different players' contracts to each other. As we can see here, we have a lot of different sizes of contracts. As we can see, the lowest contract we have on here is 1 year and a whopping $16,500. This contract was for Tom King of the Detroit Falcons, who was a rookie at the time. It was the smallest contract of all time. Then we have some other smaller contracts. Like Bill Walton's 7-year, $7 million, or Michael Jordan's 8-year, $25 million. Although MJ's contract was actually considered big for the time, it's pretty small on this graph. We've then had some of the longer contracts like Chris Webber's 15-year, $74 million contract, or Magic Johnson's insane 25-year, $25 million contract. It's kind of funny because no NBA player has even played that long. The longest career was Vince Carter, who played 22 years. Then we have some more average contracts on the chart, many of which came from the late 90s or 2000s. We have guys like Elton Brand, who signed a 5-year and $82 million, Gilbert Arenas' 6-year, $111 million deal, Shaq's 7-year, $120 million deal, and Kobe's 7-year, $136 million deal. Then moving up on the graph, we have some of the bigger contracts of this list. Many of these contracts up here are more recent players. You have deals like Steph Curry's 4-year, $215 million, Giannis's 5-year, $228 million deal, and the biggest NBA contract of all time, 5 years and $264 million, which is held by Nikola Jokic. As you can see, there's a little bit of correlation here on this graph. As time goes on, so is the increasing prices of these contracts. The guys from the 1980s could only wish to make the amount of money the guys are making today. But why are NBA players making more money than their peers of the past? It's pretty simple. It's just the NBA has generated a lot more revenue in the past years. In 1984, the NBA made $165 million of profit. In 2001, they made about $2.5 billion. And in 2019, the league made up to $8.8 billion. So it only makes sense that the players make more money. Anyways, as time has gone on, the NBA has given their players more individual free agency freedoms. Players up until now haven't had the same luxuries that these modern contracts give them to move to a different team. Contracts now are designed to give the players all the power that let them get the best situation for themselves, not their teams. I'll give you guys an example. In 2004, Kobe signed his 7-year, $136 million contract with the Lakers. During the middle of this contract, Kobe was requesting trades out of LA because the team was rebuilding and wasn't winning. If Kobe were playing with the same contract in 2022, he would have been able to use his player option in the 3rd year of the contract, and we probably wouldn't have seen Kobe as a 20-year Laker. But because he had the contract in the mid-2000s with no player option or other freedoms, he had to play that whole contract with the Lakers and hope that they would build a championship contender in that time. Lucky for him, they did, and he won 2 more rings because of it. I'll show you guys a more recent example of how new contract circumstances encourage players to seek their best interest to say. For example, LeBron James signed a 6-year, $110 million contract with the Heat in 2010. But before, in 2014, LeBron used his early termination option to void the remaining years of the contract. Now, if this same situation happened, let's say 10 or 20 years ago, we would have seen LeBron as a member of the Heat for all 6 years, and then he could have possibly re-signed with them again. Do you see how this makes keeping players on one team so much harder now than it was about 15 years or more ago? Players in today's game can sign a contract from 1 to 5 years long, 6 sometimes depending on certain qualifications. Before, there wasn't really a limit on how long you could sign a player to. That's why you saw some of these outrageously long contracts, like Magic Johnson's 25-year, $25 million deal. GMs and front offices have less time than ever to build a championship-level team and please a player's request before they can just sign with another better team. So is it really fair to blame the players for not being loyal to a single team when the logistics are created to help players move to better teams? Like, the NBA constructed these rules and regulations for players to seek their best interest as an individual, which oftentimes isn't just staying on one team. And now they're getting criticized about it. It makes no sense. Although the contract circumstances favor the players over teams, is that really all there is to it? Or is there more? Another significant reason why I believe players aren't staying with their respective teams is the shift in culture of basketball. Over the past 2 decades or so, we've seen the rise of AAU basketball. A league of basketball, to say the least, doesn't really encourage player loyalty. Before several NBA players actually played in the league, they were playing with each other in AAU basketball. Like, for example, the Paterson, New Jersey AAU team in 1994 had Kobe Bryant, Vince Carter, Rip Hamilton, and Tim Thomas all on one team. You had the Spice Indy Heat, who had Mike Conley, Jeff Teague, Eric Gordon, and Josh McRoberts. And you had the Monac Elite in 2016, who had Trae Young and Michael Porter Jr., just to name a few examples. My point here is that these AAU teams make it easier for players to have chemistry with each other at an early age, or makes it easier for players to generally be more friendly with each other. Speaking of that, social media has also made it easier for NBA players to become friends with each other, rather than viewing them as just enemies of their rival team. Social media has made it easier for players to form alliances, which makes the chances of them actually coming together on a team a lot higher. All of this modern basketball culture in AAU and social media has really changed the way that players look at opposing stars of rival teams. When opposing stars used to be viewed as players' arch enemies and someone you just wouldn't be friends with, has changed into alliances and friendships that stars around the league have with each other. From the combination of these 2 factors I've previously mentioned, the contract circumstances giving powers to the players and the players forming friendships with their opponents, has really led to one significant thing in the NBA now. Players ditching their original teams to form better teams with other stars, aka super teams. Why are we seeing more super teams in the NBA now that just consist of random superstars whose games clearly don't mesh well together sometimes? Because they can. The contracts players sign today are so low commitment, so if a super team just doesn't end up working out, the superstars can either A, request a trade, which the GMs must respect now, or B, either exercise their player options in their contracts and sign somewhere else. Like I've said, we've seen this so much in the NBA now. For many of these superstars, money doesn't really seem to be their priority. Money is everywhere they go. They can go to any team in the league and still make an insane amount of money. So why not get the best of both worlds? Sign to a really good team and make insane money. We've seen NBA players constantly sacrifice money for winning basketball. Anthony Davis is leaving about an additional $10 to $15 million on the table for the next 3 or 4 years, just so the Lakers can bring in more talent. Kawhi took a pay cut going to Toronto instead of staying in San Antonio, and look how that affected him, an extra ring on his finger. DeMar DeRozan took a pay cut to a much better Chicago Bulls team rather than staying with Toronto. Like, I think most superstars would rather lose a few $1,000,000 if it means an extra championship or two. Player loyalty in the NBA. It's pretty much non-existent compared to years prior. It seems like players would rather join a team of superstars to win rather than winning with the team that drafted them. They would rather win right away with a super team than have the patience to wait there for an organization to build them a championship contending team because of circumstances in players' contracts that encourage them to seek their best interests as a player, the effects social media and basketball culture have had on them, and simply their will to win. Players have tended not to stay loyal to a singular team, but explore their options on other teams. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.